You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mamas, and welcome back to another amazing episode of the Mama Work It podcast. Marissa Lonick here, working mama for, founder of Mama Work It, and your host. I am super excited to introduce you to our guest today, Andrea Ippolito. Andrea is the founder and CEO of SimpliFed, the maternal health tech platform helping new parents access the baby feeding support they need when they need it. A mom of two under 5 years old, she is a biomedical engineer by training, has worked with the VA, founded a number of health tech companies, has testified before Congress, and is a faculty member of Cornell University. An advocate for female entrepreneurship and women in STEM, she also is an expert in maternal leave and workplace efforts around new parents. Andrea, so much to talk about, so much to dive in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so curious more about your story. Can you tell us just more about you and how you got started as CEO of this organization?
Yeah, well, it's all based on personal lived experience with having my kiddos. I have two daughters, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm pregnant with my third daughter. I'm 26 weeks along. But my background is in engineering and worked in medical devices. And then I went to grad school where my research was for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on how you can implement and scale telebehavioral health to help support service members faced with post-traumatic stress. So been working in telehealth, and then I went to the federal government. So big, healthcare / government nerd. And at the tail end of that was pregnant with my first daughter, had my first daughter, and had a heck of a time with breastfeeding and baby feeding. It was incredibly stressful. I felt so lost. I tried breastfeeding and had a heck of a time with it. My daughter continued to lose weight. I felt like I failed as my first task as a parent. And I quickly moved to formula, which, saved my daughter's life. She gained weight. It was great. And, I learned that most parents do both. They both breastfeed and use formula, but, they felt lost in their baby feeding journey and no one had really prepared them during pregnancy. And then I also learned that under the Affordable Care Act, health plans are required to cover breastfeeding and baby feeding support at no cost to families, so for free, starting during pregnancy. And I was just blown away by that. Like, holy moly, you're supposed to get access to support as a pregnant postpartum parent and not have to struggle through this, or at least get support for when you are struggling. And so that's what really ignited SimpliFed to be born. And ever since then, just have been on this journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I feel like that is like one of those topics that people don't talk about but need to talk about because it's like all of a sudden you have this baby and you're thrown into this. And to be honest, I've got 4 kids. You're expecting your third. Like, it's never the same for each kid. So even if you are not a new mom, it is still a learning experience because it's a new human being. You're going through it in a different season of life. And, to not realize you have potentially these resources or to not, tap into that support it's really hard. It's really hard during that time. So I'm so glad that you're an advocate for this and that you're making strides in this area because, yeah, it is challenging for sure.
It is. And we do need to talk about it more. And that's one of the main reasons why we start serving folks during pregnancy, to set expectations and good news, it's covered by your health plan.
Yeah, yeah. So, for our listeners who may not have heard of SimpliFed before, can you give us just like a quick overview of what it is and what you do?
Yeah, so Simply Fed, we comprehensively help support families surrounding baby feeding. And what that looks like is we start working with families during pregnancy. Other moms refer to us. We have partnerships with OBs that refer to us, but we have this national presence. So no matter where you live in the US, you can get our services and our support. And we do a prenatal education appointment fully covered by your health plan. And in that prenatal appointment, we cover things like what are your goals for baby feeding? If you don't know even where to start, we do some education, but mostly we do a lot of listening to understand what does baby feeding look like to you? Do you want to bottle feed? Do you want to use formula? Do you want to breastfeed? Do you want your partner to be involved in the middle of the night with feedings? Okay, let's talk about what that looks like. Do you want a breast pump? All right, let's get your breast pump ordered. Here's how you select breast pumps that work for you, and let's get you sized. So we do a lot of listening to understand your goals. And then after baby's born, we provide ongoing support. And that's key because we think of baby feeding support a lot like physical therapy and mental health, where you don't just have one appointment and you're good, because your needs change. Those needs look very different in the first week versus month 2 or 3. And say you're transitioning back to work, or you need to travel and you want to go on vacation, and what does traveling look like with baby feeding, or what does weaning look like, what is combo feeding or formula feeding, how do you select the right formula for you and your baby's tummy. There's a whole number of things that change over time, and so we work with families in an ongoing way. We have a national network of providers that are inclusive, non-judgmental. They're lactation consultants, but they're also experts in baby feeding, whether that's formula and breast pumps as well. And so along the way, we help you get access to insurance covered breast pumps if that's one of your goals. And we also help distribute a formula. For those that need formula or want formula, we partner with Nature's One Babies Only, which is a super trusted organic brand that's also accessible and affordable, which is critical, especially in this ongoing formula shortage that we're facing. And SimpliFed is doing something that doesn't sound controversial, but it weirdly is. We're a breastfeeding support organization that distributes formula, and right now most parents in the U.S. both breastfeed and use formula. But sadly, they face an extraordinary amount of judgment, and they can face it from family and friends and healthcare providers and the hospital after giving birth. And SimpliFed believes it's your right as a parent to choose however you want to feed your baby. And even if you're exclusively breastfeeding, we know that parents face judgment about where and about how and for how long, and also what about foster parents, adopted parents who can't breastfeed. And we know that parents have to go back to work. Some studies show 1 in 4 going back to work within 2 weeks because there's no paid parental leave and need feeding options. So we help support families no matter how they feed their baby, whether that's breastfeeding, formula feeding, pumping, donor milk, G-tube feeding. And also the super good news is that on the support side, it's covered by health plans. So we have national Aetna commercial contracts. So if anyone's on Aetna, you can access our services for free. We serve all military families for free via TRICARE. We have a number of Medicaid contracts. So it is your right under federal law to get access to these support and services. And we think it's really important to start during pregnancy so that you get the support you need to design a plan that works for you and your physical and mental health.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love, love, love that you start the process during pregnancy, because when you really think about this holistically, it makes sense, right? During pregnancy is when you're thinking about like what you're going to name the baby, how you're going to decorate the nursery, like all these kind of upcoming things, right? Why wouldn't you be thinking about baby feeding and sort of your plan for that? You're thinking about your birth plan. You got to be thinking about these other things too. And I feel like it's a calmer time to gain that knowledge, that education, rather than when you're in like the thick of it with a screaming baby, postpartum, exhausted, to now trying to be like making all these crazy decisions and learning. And I mean, not that you may not have to pivot from your initial plan, because we all know like plans rarely go as planned, especially in motherhood, but to have that knowledge in advance is so helpful.
It's so helpful. And what studies show is that if you're breastfeeding and that's part of your journey, when women don't reach their breastfeeding expectations, they're much, much, much more likely to be diagnosed with postpartum depression. And so, a
Mm,
key aspect alongside everything you just said, which is so right on, is that during pregnancy, we set expectations on what baby feeding looks like, especially in those first crazy weeks when you're still recovering physically and emotionally from birth. And milk tends to not come in for 3 to 5 days. It's droplets at first, so a lot of folks think they're failing when actually they're doing awesome. And so our providers work with you to talk about what this looks like, so that way you can be prepared mentally and physically, depending on what options you're choosing as part of your experience.
yeah. Yeah. So good. I really also love that you are promoting all different ways to feed the baby, right? Because there is a lot of pressure, there's a lot of controversy, a lot of opinions out there, varying opinions of which way is the best way, right? And so I really love that SimpliFed is offering all options. There's no judgment, it sounds like. It's really just what your decision is, what's best for you and your baby, which is, essentially how it should be. Um, Talk to us a little bit about this sort of like this decision process and how it can affect the new parent.
Yeah, and it's so, baby feeding is so tied to mom's mental health, and and breastfeeding, and no matter how you feed, is so tied to your physical health as well. And we believe you need to be so inclusive, and that's why you can go to our site, get insurance covered lactation support, insurance covered breast pumps, and now also formula. And we want healthy babies, of course, and we want healthy moms baby in the way that she wants, that protects her physical and mental health. And so our providers will work with you to understand your goals and your situation to make an informed choice on what works best for you. And you wouldn't think that's controversial, but it is. And so we think it's time now in 2023 to support all parents without judgment, no matter how they feed their baby. And that's what SimpliFed stance is. And it's so critical that you understand what your options are over time, because like you said, in those first weeks it's going to look a lot different than later, and it's going to look different kid to kid. So depending on what your goal was for your first kid, it will look probably different based on what you learned in your last, and getting that education and resources. I was talking to some of the patients that we have, just such a privilege to serve, and they were talking about how they really wanted to get support surrounding bottle feeding because their baby was having a hard time transitioning to the bottle, and mom was exhausted and just mentally was just not like in a good spot. And having dad be involved with those late night feedings was so critical for their family and how they were doing and holding up. And so our providers work with them to introduce bottles. How do you select the right bottle for you? And also pumping, and how do you select the right pump that works for you? We had this other story of a mom that really wanted to go on this girls trip, right? And she was fully breastfeeding, and that was going to be hard. So all right, that's your goal, let's figure out what that looks like. And so everyone's context and situation is different, and we work with parents to design plans and execute those plans and work with them in an ongoing way 7 days a week, so that we're there for them, because there is so much judgment, and people should be able to feed their baby no matter how they want to, based on what their goals are. But it is so tied to your health, physical and mental, that you want to have evidence-based providers, not Dr. Google, helping you through this process.
Dr. Google, I love that. Yeah, and I just love how it's covered by insurance too, because there are tons of expenses. We all know, like once you have a baby, there's tons of expenses that you may not even know to budget for that pop up here, there, and everywhere. And it's nice to know that this is a benefit that, people can access in that way.
Totally. And no matter if you're breastfeeding, formula feeding, pumping, it is so connected to your health, and it should be under law as required by federal law to be covered by insurance. And, we always say, breasts are organs, and this is part of medicine. And yet to date, there has been no enforcement of this policy. And so organizations like SimpliFed, and there's a whole bunch of us out there, and but organizations like SimpliFed are part of this chorus of ensuring families have access to this support because it is so connected to your health. And also super excited to share that, again, whether you're breastfeeding, formula feeding, pumping, no matter how you feed your baby, our insurance plans cover it. Aetna came to us and said, we think it's really important for us to cover support for those that are fully formula feeding, because formula feeding is so connected to mental health and making sure you're safely using formula and preparing formula, especially in light of this ongoing formula shortage. And we love that. And it's so great to hear health plans take a stance on that is, similar in alignment with ours.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. I never thought about it from that perspective, but it makes total sense. Total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I was a corporate mom postpartum each time I added to my family or to our family. And so while I think this presents its own challenges of commuting and pumping at the office or formula feeding at home, there's likely a whole different set of challenges, I imagine, if you're a mom of babies and an entrepreneur. Right? So this is you, right? You're in the thick of it. You're going to be welcoming another baby soon and you're an entrepreneur. Let's talk about it. Like, what's your experience been like when you welcomed your other two children? And do you think, being a corporate mom or a mom who's employed elsewhere is easier or harder than being employed for yourself?
I think it's all a big cluster. And I like to say I'm failing forward constantly. I think there are pros. There, every situation, it just depends what your goals are. I know that starting Simply Fed was like a disease in a weird way. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It kept me up at night. And I know that if I wasn't doing this, I would be unhappy mentally, because this I truly do feel like is my life's work. And I also recognize and have come to terms with, and frankly, I say that, but there are still moments where I'm like, what am I doing? But I've come to terms with the fact that there are going to be things that I miss. There are going to be things that are going to be more difficult. However, I am my own boss and our company is fully virtual. So if one of the kiddos gets sick, I can be there to go pick them up. And hey, good news, I run a baby feeding company. So if there's a baby, when I'm speaking with investors or speaking with different partners, it's somewhat to be expected. And so that is something that's really important to me. I know that's something that's really important to our team, is having that flexibility to take your kids to appointments in the middle of the day and not have to hide it. Like our team in their calendars, like, oh, I'm at Maddie's XYZ appointment, ENT appointment, or I have to go take care of this, or I'm grocery shopping right now because that's what I need. And I find personally that if you give folks that flexibility, then it just makes them that much more tied to the mission. But when you have to hide around corners that you have kids, and I do think it's getting better now that folks are, in the pandemic and there's more virtual work. But I overall think society has done a terrible job of supporting working parents. And I think they've done a horrendous job, especially of supporting working moms. Women right now are getting more undergraduate degrees than men. The pipeline is strong. We are incredible. And yet we see a lack of women in leadership roles. And my hypothesis, and I know there's a lot of data to support it, so this is not an original thought, is that it's not a pipeline issue. It's women hit what Society of Human Resource Management calls the maternal wall. And organizations that don't evolve to help support women once they enter the workforce will be behind, because we are half the workforce now. Get over it. And for those that don't want to support that, that's okay. But we are half the workforce. And so companies need to evolve to help support moms in particular, because we are an economic engine, and supporting women and moms is not philanthropy. It is dang good business sense, because we know that companies that have women in leadership roles are more profitable, they're more innovative, they're more productive. And so for those that do want to work outside the home, companies need to help support them in that arena. And it's something I feel very strongly about. And whatever you choose, whether you want to work inside the home or outside the home, every parent is a working parent. And overall, we just need to do so much more to support families in this country. And we need so much more societal infrastructure in place.
Yeah, preach, girl. I hear ya.
Soapbox, I took it.
Yeah, yeah. And I really love that SimpliFed is not just a resource for like the postpartum days or the pregnancy days, the planning days, but also like the return to work days, as you mentioned, or like the weaning phase or, whatever phase you're in, because you do, especially as a working mom, when you're going back to work, like you really do need that support, even if it is just like a phone call, a coaching, a resource, like a recommendation, right, of something that works well for transporting milk or whatever it is, like you do need those resources in all the different seasons, not just that initial postpartum season, which I think a lot of people, their mind goes there first and foremost. Like, okay, I've got it under control now. The first couple weeks, I think we're good. And then they don't think to potentially tap into the resource again, even though, as you and I both know, when you've got a baby, those first 12 months, you're probably going through a dozen different seasons of transition, right? So it is great that you kind of have that capability to support moms and parents even throughout that time.
Yeah, and the good news is the health plans cover it for free. So double hooray that you get the support and you don't have to pay for it. And with my second daughter, weaning was a terrifying experience because after having my first daughter, where weaning was in a way a non-event because my production was so low, and it kind of just one day I just stopped doing it, and it all worked. And but with my second daughter, breastfeeding was going better, and for my mental health, I needed to stop because it was all encompassing, and it was not good. And so I needed to start the weaning process, and having access to support to walk through how to do that safely. And so that way you can do it in a way that works for you, works for your baby and your baby's tummy. And that transition is so important. And that's why we believe so strongly in this ongoing longitudinal model, and it's all virtual. So you don't have to go to another doctor's appointment or another clinic appointment and have to, snap in your newborn to their car seat, which I always find terrifying, and like I'm going to break them even as they got older. And so I love that our model is virtual. We can meet folks where they're at 7 days a week.
Yeah. And probably easy to get an appointment if it's virtual and it's 7 days a week, I'd imagine, right?
Oh, totally. Within 24 hours, for sure.
Wow. That's incredible. All right. Last question about this. What is it that you think we're not talking about when it comes to baby feeding, but we should?
So, what I think we're not talking about is that it is a no days off, all consuming activity, whether you're breastfeeding, formula feeding, pumping, and the mental and physical load that parents take on it. And I'm pregnant. I'm 26 weeks pregnant, and I am honestly, people are like, oh, pregnancy's hard. And I'm like, yes, pregnancy is super hard. I'm very uncomfortable. Sleeping is hard. And when I think about postpartum experience, I've got to say, like, I'm overwhelmed just by thinking about feeding another baby. Again, no formula feeding, breastfeeding, and just having to be on top of that again. And, I do plan on starting off breastfeeding, and I do plan on combo feeding. And it's a no days off when you travel, having to bring a pump. And like you were saying, or, oh my gosh, like I remember I went on vacation, and you have to protect your boobs if you're breastfeeding. And I went to a concert and I got terrible mastitis, and it happened super quickly. And within like 3 to 4 hour period, I went from a 99 to 103 to 105 temperature. And that is just so scary. And you start to get delirious, honestly, at that point. And it's all consuming. When you transition back to work, having to put time in your calendar. And I don't think we recognize the mental and physical load that baby feeding is. And we need to support families in that. And going back to the societal infrastructure piece, we need to make sure they have access to a room at your workplace, which, by the way, is also your right under federal law via the Pump Act that came out in December of 2022. And a lot of parents have to fight for that. And that's not great at all. And that's not cool. And so the best things that I think we can do as a society is give parents that protected space, get them paid parental leave, also universal child care support. Hey, while we're at it, but also giving them insurance covered access to support, insurance covered access to breast pumps, but also making sure workplaces have environments to make it a little bit easier because it's a no days off relentless activity.
Yeah, totally. I cannot believe that came out in just December 22. When you said that, I was a little bit shocked, to be honest.
It's maternal health in this country is a tragedy, right? The US is the most dangerous developed nation to deliver a baby. And it's particularly terrible for Black women. And that is just unacceptable in 2023. Like how is that possible? And we need to do so much more in this country to support families and to support moms in particular.
Yeah. Support the moms, guys. Let's do it.
And it
Simply
can't just
Fed.
be us, right? We need the dads to be on board with this, and we need paid parental leave, not just paid maternity leave, or else we're gonna still continue to be left behind.
Agree. Oh my gosh. Well, so much good stuff to say here, Andrea. So many good points and such good stuff that you're doing at SimpliFed. Thank you so much for sharing all that. We're going to now dive into our lightning round where we're going to ask you some random questions just so we can get to know you a little bit better, more personally. Are you ready?
Ready to go.
Okay. Let's see. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Well, I always wanted to be an astronaut growing up. So I named my first daughter May after Mae Jemison. So I wish I could fly.
Yeah, you're actually not the first person to say flying on this show. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, good one. Okay, what if you could go on vacation tomorrow anywhere in the world? Where would it be and why?
Well, Tuscany is the real answer, but I'm pregnant. And the idea of being in Tuscany, not being able to drink all the wine sounds like my nightmare. But let's pretend I'm a year from now. But there's this place called Poggio a Loro and right outside of a place called San Gimignano. And it's 90 euros a night. This is a cheap place. And dinner is 25 euros, sorry, 25 to 30 euros a night. And it's all you can drink of their wine, and all the food is made there on house, and it's overlooking this beautiful vineyard. And when I'm in a dark place, I always think about San Gimignano and this place called Poggio Loro. Also check out Poggio Loro. Highly recommend.
So you've been there before?
We went there on our honeymoon, and then we went back after our daughter turned 1. And it's it's expensive obviously to get to Italy, but once you're there, it's quite affordable, and so highly recommend that spot.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like your go-to vacay destination. Nice.
Totally. When I can find childcare.
Yes. So if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Calories don't count. I'm super curious since you're pregnant right now. What's your answer?
Okay, so this is actually a really embarrassing answer because I am 100% Italian American, but I love pasta with Prego sauce. I know that sounds hilarious, but I've always loved the taste. I thought I'd grow out of it, but yeah, pasta with Prego sauce. Easy.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay, what if they made a movie about your life? Who would you want to play you?
All right. Well, I do not look like her now. When I was a young, in shape person, I looked a lot. I looked like Penelope Cruz, but I'm so far from Penelope Cruz now.
No,
with my
I could see it.
hair.
I could see it.
That would be, and that, by the way, that's aspirational. That's like what my dream would be, right? That's how you phrased it. I don't think that's actually who I in real life look like, but hey, if a girl can dream.
No, I could see Penelope Cruz. Yeah, that's a good one. Totally. Now that you say it. All right. What's your guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh my gosh, so many. So I know I love Emily in Paris, anything Real Housewives. It's so good. I mean, I just get sucked in, and
Tell me, what's your favorite like location of the Housewives?
New York, Bethany, and just she's hilarious and controversial, and I mean, they're just so good. It's
Yeah.
so deadly. It just sucks you in. And New Jersey is right there. But I mean, honestly, all of them, they're so
Spoken
spectacular.
like a true East Coaster. There you
You
go.
know, so obnoxious.
No, I get it. I get it. All
Thank
right,
you.
Andrea, this has been super fun, super informative. Thank you so much for being a guest. Please tell our listeners where they can find you before we wrap up.
Yeah, so come check out simplifed.com, SIMPLIFED.com. It's going to want to autocorrect to simplified, but it's simply fed. Check us out at SimpliFed Baby, and seriously tell your friends and family that are pregnant or postpartum that they can get insurance covered free support surrounding feeding your baby, and also get access to consistent, amazing organic formula as well via our website.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much for providing this amazing resource to pregnant and postpartum parents. We so appreciate you and all you're doing.
Thanks so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.